Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to an episode of Tatami Talk. My name is Juan. This is my partner Anthony. This is a Judo podcast for Judo players by two Judo players. So, Anthony, I know how you've been doing, but there's some stuff we forgot about talking in the last episode about your little vision quest of grappling going up north. So, there was one joke thing I wanted to talk about, and I guess it's mandatory that all Chinese men, when they go up north, when they go to Seattle, you have to go see Bruce Lee's grave.
I think that's something you guys made up.
No, because every Chinese guy I know pretty much that has gone up to Seattle always comes back with a picture of Bruce Lee's grave. They always got that photo of like them bowing. They got their hands together, praying and stuff. Oh, thank you, Master Lee. And like, thank you, Mr. Brandon. I would go in crow makeup personally because I love that movie. Everyone I know, Juan loves a crow. All right. The original OGs.
So I'll be honest. I didn't even know he was buried in Seattle.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that. So it was, I was at a hotel. Remember I told you I was so sore I couldn't move? That I was in a hotel laying on my bed scrolling through Instagram. And there's a guy that I follow, and I think he's also one of our listeners. He's the head instructor of, I don't know how to pronounce this, Kogayan Academy in Virginia. He's a BJJ black belt and a Judo black belt. I've been actually... want to go train with him next time I'm in town because my wife's family is there. His technique is really good. I want to train with him, but his name is Victor Vasile, I think it was. And anyway, I saw his Instagram posting a picture of him in at the Bruce Lee's grave, and then I looked at the location. I'm like, oh, it's in Seattle. And then I was like, oh, cool. I'll head there next week when I'm in Seattle. So that's how I found out. I didn't know it was there. And then when I mentioned it to the guy I was traveling, Travis, and also my friend up in Seattle, she's like, I lived here. I never been there. So she's Asian. She's Chinese. So I'm like, all right, let's do this.
It's mandatory. You must go visit Bruce Lee and Brandon Lee's grave.
I don't know if it's mandatory. No one ever told me that.
You didn't get the memo?
I thought he was buried in California. I mean, because he lived here, right? So
yeah.
But he went up to school. He went to school up in UW, University of Washington. That's where he got his philosophy degree.
And when he first came to US, I believe is that he went up there first, stayed with family, got his degree up there, met his wife up there, and all that. And then that's when they moved to Oakland, and they moved to LA, and after that, and then they moved to Hong Kong. And I'm not gonna get all into his stuff. So much of a martial art nerd I am about this shit.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, after I realized that, I thought he posted the video, the picture from like a previous trip. But I posted a picture of me at Henzo Gracie Portland, and then he was like, I was there last night. And then I was like, oh wait, no, did he say last night? He said in the morning. He was there in the morning. That was hungover. He was like, I was there in the morning. I was like, well, I was there last night and I couldn't wake up for the morning class. Plus it was a no-gi class. So I've never done no-gi before. So we just missed each other. He was up in Seattle and he came down to Portland, and we just missed each other as I was leaving up to go to Seattle. So it's okay. I'll be there sometime next year, probably, to visit his club.
So there's another funny thing about the grave. Now, this is what my friend told me when went to go visit it. Another Chinese guy that went to go visit the grave, is that there's a bench right in front of their graves. And everyone thinks that's like a reflecting bench. Like you sit there, you look at the grave, you pray.
It's a nice, if I remember correctly, it's a marble stone grave. I actually have a picture. Yeah, I think it was marble.
Okay. But it's a nice bench out here and stuff. It's very nice. But what I was told is that it's actually for the grave in front of Bruce Lee's grave. That's
it looks like it's just cement. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's actually for the family next to him or the family in front of him, behind him, whatever, how it's set up there. But people use it for Bruce. Now, you told me that when we talk about this, you said, oh, no, it has his daughter and his wife's name on it. So I think it's their bench.
So this is what it says. Husband and father, son and brother, you are always with us. And then Linda and Shannon, which is wife and daughter. And so I don't know what it's maybe, how do I say this? Him and Brandon Lee's grave is like, kind of like cornered off with a fence with like a little balcony fence area. And then the bench is part of that fenced off area. Okay. And then behind the fence, there's like a wall of someone else's grave. No, is it a wall? Let me see. Okay, behind the bench is another person's grave, right behind the bench. Like, I don't know if you can see it here.
No, it's an invisible sky. Just see the background right now.
No, I'm sure you can Google pictures, right? Like literally back to back next to someone's grave. So that's probably why people thought it was someone else's. But there's like the balcony fence area has this like little walkway to accommodate people lining up to go watch his grave, basically. And I actually
was there a line? Was there like a lot of people there waiting?
No, there wasn't a lot. There was like 2 or 3 families there, and then we just like waited till they left, and then the next group goes in. Like we just kind of had our own thing. What was annoying though is it's a cemetery, so the parking there's no parking. You have to pull off to the side of the graves basically, and then if anyone's ever been to a cemetery, it's kind of narrow, so people don't want to walk that extra few steps, so they all park like right next to the grave, and one, when you take the picture, it kind of ruins the picture of the graves because it's like cars behind the graves, basically. And 2, it kind of blocks traffic for anyone else that's coming or trying to leave. Like I had to do like a 20-point turn to get out because someone parked like right at the exit of the roundabout. So if you visit, just be wary of whether you're blocking people's entry and exit, and don't park like right behind the grave. Just like park a little further down where the road's a little wider so people can actually pass through. This is what I recommend. You don't want to be that guy. So
we're all martial artists. We can walk a few feet. Come on, people. Come on. All right. So another thing we forgot to talk about that was really cool was that we talked about how other martial arts play music while they practice.
I mean, other clubs. Well, some other clubs. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we were also talking about how the Japanese team was starting to play music, but one of the judo clubs you visited, I can't remember which one you said. You'll say right now.
It was Portland. Well, not Portland Judo, Bridgetown Judo.
Bridgetown Judo plays music during the practice. Now, is it during so explain that? Is it like during warm-ups, randori the entire time?
So I think it's during randori and then during drills. Like when they say, do uchikomi, it's like uchikomi line, or basically they turn down the volume in between the instructions. When they're instructing, but then when we're off to go drill, they turn volume back up. So we were playing music while we were training, and that's actually pretty fun. Maybe because I'm used to focusing that I don't think, because one of the things we talked about in that episode about talking about training with music in the background was that I'm afraid of going to the beat, because when I did Muay Thai, that's what I did. Like say, it's like Tai Bo, like
everyone's going to that beat. Bop, 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 bop.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like I was jump roping, kicking the pads to the beat of the music. But for judo, I didn't notice it. I guess the volume wasn't so loud that it covered everything. I could still hear people talk, which is, at my Muay Thai place, it was pretty loud, but here I think it was just the right amount of volume where it wasn't distracting me. But I don't know. I actually liked it. It kind of gave an atmosphere of, all right, let's train. We're not here to like hang out. I don't know if that's true. Because I'm thinking about it.
Montage. Got to get a montage.
Because during open mat, people play music too, but I don't know. I just feel like having the music there kind of gave it like atmosphere, kind of like you go to a restaurant and the music they play at a restaurant or a bar or a lounge kind of gives it a different feeling, right? And I think training judo also did that, but it could have been the music that they were playing too. But
what kind of music were they playing? Was it like,
it was a variety. I think there was like hip hop, pop, like rock, punk. I think there was some punk in there. I don't remember. Again, it wasn't so distracting, the music. So it was just kind of like background noise, like now people are all listening to that lo-fi YouTube channel to study and work
lo-fi hip hop.
Yeah. Like if you ask them like, what was the song? Like you probably don't remember. It's just some low chill. It's background music, basically. When you work, you wouldn't blast that music like loud in your headphones, max volume. So at least I think most people wouldn't.
Well, you just give me an interesting idea. Just next time we practice, I'm going to play some old breakdancing music during Newaza. It's funny because to me, when I practice on my own, and some of our own students will know this or not know this when I practice. So when I'm at the dojo by myself, I'll listen to music also by myself. Cause I don't like listening to music when people are there because I don't want to offend nobody with what I'm listening to. Like, oh, Juan, listen to this song or this hip hop or that rock or this. So like sometimes I'll be in a very poppy mood. I'll listen to a bunch of pop music. Oh, Juan's listening to Dua Lipa today. Oh, look at Juan and stuff. But most of the time when I practice, I always call it my evil music, my evil time. Because you've come to my time. Well, I play classical cello music or either a Spanish guitar or flamenco guitar stuff. Well, I do my own stuff and I do my own like karate katas and my own little workout. And I always call it my evil time because like in movies, what do the bad guys always listen to when they're working out? Classical music.
I mean, yeah, I like cleaning to get classical music. Like if we put on music while we're cleaning, for example, we should suggest this to Philippe actually. When we have the next dojo cleanup, we should have like music playing in the background. I think that would change the atmosphere a little bit, right?
Here's actually a funny experiment. When I worked at a grocery store for a while, then I worked at this Korean grocery store in Little Tokyo. They played classical music all the time. When it was slow classical music, I noticed that people would walk slower around the store. But when it was faster, upbeat, like what is that? Swarm of the Bees? Is that the name of the song?
And that song, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
there's something in the Bees. When that song come on, I see people just walk around the store just faster. I'm like, oh, that's how we get them in, get them out. We play that all day. Even the baggers and the cashiers, when that song comes on, like,
Flight of the Bumblebee. That's what it was.
Flight of the Bumblebee. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that. I'll see people move faster when that song would come on.
I mean, they have done studies on this, right? Like like especially shopping malls. They're like, what temperature do we set the AC at? What kind of music do we play to get people to stay there longer and shop, impulse buy stuff more? Like they do all this kind of stuff. So, we should do a study on music effectiveness, how it affects judo training. I mean, if you think about it, when Eric teaches Tayatoshi, for example, and at our dojo, and also some of the online YouTube instructionals of what you see, I'm trying to think. I think the Kosei Inouye Uchimata DVD, for example, when they teach Uchimata, they always tell you to like go to a beat when you do the Uchikomi. It's like bum, and also they emphasize on the second step. You have to like stomp as hard as you can. Like that's the traditional Japanese way of teaching it. It's like bum, and form a tempo when you do it. So it's like, why don't you just play music that's like at that beat?
What's it? I'm going to play reggaeton. What's the reggaeton beat? So I play reggaeton in the background.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think once you're more advanced, you kind of have a rhythm going, right? But then if for the newer people, it might help to have music or some sort of beat in the background where you're like the steps just following that tempo. So
that's a good theory. It's something to think about. So you tried it. Maybe we should try it one day at class, but I was just worried that somebody like, oh, I don't like that song or that song, blah, 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 this, or, oh, did you hear they said one curse word in there?
Everybody likes, there's just pick songs with no lyrics. So
that's what I said. That's why I listen to classical music half the time when I'm at the dojo. I don't want to offend nobody. Don't bother me to my evil time. All right. I got my evil cello in the background playing. So that was pretty interesting. So those are the last two experiences. We talked about you go visiting Bruce Lee's grave. We talked about you training with music for the first time at Judo Dojo and stuff. But like I said before, I've done it at wrestling and catch school does it, but you don't see it a lot of judo clubs. Was there anything else you want to get out before we move on? Anything else out there?
I think that was it. It was just the trip overall. So there's so much stuff to cover and it's easy to that episode is really long already. So let's just like that. Yeah. That
was like almost a 2-hour episode of everything. So, all right. So let's go on to our main topic, I guess, for today. So some of you may have seen or may not seen if you follow my Instagram or stuff. So I went to a kata clinic and some people might be like, what do you mean a kata clinic? And it's like, yes, judo has kata. The thing about judo is that we don't implement our kata until you get to your black belt or when you're going to get your black belt. Some clubs change. Some clubs will start like at brown belt. You learn your katas and stuff, but you really don't need to learn or do them and get certified or get certificates until you're black belt. Unlike if you do karate, taekwondo, other forms of more what they call like traditional martial arts, you'll For every, like from white belt, you start learning katas. You got kata for your white belt, yellow belt, orange belt, all the way up. You learn one kata or two katas in there. But in judo, we only have katas for black belt. But like I said, a little caveat there. Some schools have you start off as brown belt or will allow you to start learning katas when you're a brown belt. Now in judo, I have it written down right here. How many katas are there?
Well, the caveat is in the US, right? Because I know in Europe, some places to get your sankyu, you have to do like the first set of the Nagino kata and the uke side or the tori side. I don't remember. And then as you go up, you have to do more and more.
I was going to talk about that. But so in judo, we have, what is the list right here? 7 main katas that you have to learn how to do. Now, the first one Anthony talked about was Nagino kata. Now, most of us that we all get our black belts all have to do Nagino kata. The things that change is that some dojos in the US will have you they'll have you be the one being thrown as a brown belt. Mm-hmm. And you only have to do the first 3 sets. So in Nagino kata, there's 5 sets of 5 moves. And it's to show that you know the basic throws in judo. If you can do all these sets and all these throws, that shows that you know the basics of judo, that you can throw decently from left and right side, not just one side, left and right side. And you know how to fall and you know how to beat and you know how to throw people with all the basics. So back in the day, back a long, long time ago, back when I was a brown belt and I was trying to get my black belt, the rule in the way they did in the US was that if you're a competitor and you had competition points, you only had to do the first 3 sets. You didn't do the full set. You just had to do the first 3 sets. But when you wanted to get to your second dan, you had to complete the entire set. You had to do the entire 5 sets. I think it was the year I got my brown belt. I mean, a year I got my black belt when I was going through the paperwork. They changed it. It was like, no matter what, you have to do the entire set, which kind of messed me up because I was just practicing the first 3 sets with me and Eric. We were just practicing the first 3 sets for like 6 months, 9 months to get it perfect because our kata instructor, B, she was super strict about everything. Everything was like, it had to be super clean, super nice, no mess ups, no failing, no movements, no overfoot throws or nothing. It had to be clean, nice. So what we did, so from my experience, what we did, we had to learn all the entire kata. Then we had to go to a kata clinic, went to the clinic, we practiced it all day. And then at the end, we performed it. So if you perform it nicely, you get certification, you get your not certification, but you get your certificate showing you've demonstrated that you're decent at it. And you put that into your little folder with all your paperwork and you mail that in to get your black belt. Now, Anthony, to get his black belt, he only performed it in front of the dojo itself. He performed it in front of 3 instructors. He did a very good job. He did it with my friend Matt. They did an amazing job. But Anthony only did the throwing part. I'm like,
well, I did the throwing part. I did the uke part when I was a brown belt. So
yeah, but I didn't see it. I didn't see it. I don't.
You're the one you were the one who were teaching us.
I know. Yeah. I know. I'm blind.
Legitimately, the uke part was harder. I think. Like yeah. It's just the throwing part was hard because of my knee. That's what made it kind of hard too. So,
so that's your first dan one, and then your second dan test. You have to do, what is it? Tatami no Kata. Yeah. And Tatami no Kata is all newaza kata. So that shows that, okay, you're going for your second dan now. Okay, you should know how to throw. Now you should have mastered your newaza stuff. You should know all your groundwork, how to do arm bars, chokes, pins, the old school leg. That's where the old school leg locks come back into play there, because there's 2. Is there 2 or 1 leg lock in there?
I think there was just 1. This is just Ashigarami, right?
Yeah, it's just a foot sweep into the because it's just a foot sweep into the leg lock and stuff, into the leg entanglement. But that's where the leg locks come back into judo. Now to get your third dan, you have to perform again. Like you have to do all stuff. You have to either perform it for your instructor, or you can go to Kata clinic, get your certification. And you get your certification, your certificate, you really don't have to do it again. You do have to like teach it to people and stuff. But once you get that certificate showing you've done it, you're good. You're clean. You're all right. Where if you don't get certification, you don't get certificate, you may have to perform the kata again to show that you know it. That's why I always tell people, get your certificate if you can, because that's with you for life. You don't have to do the kata again. So the other weekend, when I got my third dan, I demonstrated like a very light demonstration of Juno kata. Juno Kata is your third kata. That's the balance kata. Anthony always thinks Juno Kata should be taught as a white belt since it is the balance kata.
Is that what you did for your third dan? Juno Kata?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you do Juno Kata. And that's where I got my certificate finally in it. And it was me and my friend Matt. We went to the class.
Oh, that's not for your third dan though.
No. Are you thinking about like fourth dan kata? Which kata are you thinking about?
I thought the Juno Kata was required for fourth dan, and I thought for your third dan you did something else.
No. It's Juno Kata. Then for your fourth dan, well, at least I go through the USA Judo system.
Yeah.
And for fourth dan, I have to perform or get certification for Goshin Jitsu.
Goshin Jitsu. Okay.
Yeah, Goshin Jitsu.
Yep. Okay.
And this may change for other countries and stuff. Countries may have different formats of how you have to do things. And I'm just giving like a little rundown before I talk about stuff individually. But for me, like, so I performed it very lightly before, demonstrating what it is. But this one's like very in-depth. It was a full kata class. We did the full thing, the full movements, the spin around, all the stuff, the pickups to come down, the hand claps, if you know what I mean. So it's very interesting doing this, like being really tight and clean with it to get my certificate. And the one I was actually going to take before, which was like a month before that, since I am in a few years, I'm not saying like next year or like in 2 years from now, but maybe in about 3 years or 4 years, who knows how long it's going to take. I will have to do Goshin Jitsu.
Yep.
And Goshin Jitsu is when you start going into weapons. Goshin Jitsu has the bow staff, the dagger, and the gun. And yes, we have a gun kata in judo. And there's some funny ways that I'm supposed to disarm you holding it. Like there's this really one where the guy has a gun to your back. You entangle the arm, pretty much like a standing kimura with one hand, and you pull him back down. And I was like, there ain't no way that's going to work. I love judo, but there ain't no way that's going to work. And then you get to more higher rank ones. Like there's I believe it's Kimi no Kata. I believe it's sword and dagger. And is it Koshi?
It's no Kata. I think the other one was
Isuno Kata. That's the full balance one. That's the one where you see them always with their hands out and they're waving at each other and they come in.
Forms of five.
Yeah, that's supposed to be the movement of the world and the universe spinning together and using balance to pull each other over.
Yeah,
and then there's
if I remember correctly, that kata, Itsutsu no Kata, actually was something that they took from Tenjin Shinyo Ryu Jiu-Jitsu. It's like before the Kodokan was set up. So Kano took it from a different school, that form.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those are the katas and stuff. I think I went over all of them because that's all 7 of them, I believe. But yeah, as you get higher, you have to do different things. And yes, we have weapons ones about how to evade a dagger, how to evade a gun, how to evade the sword, how to evade the dagger again. There's ground ones that are more like, for the more advanced ones, when it's just sword and dagger, I believe it's mostly on your knees in Seiza position because it has to do a lot of with the samurai stuff, like how a samurai would stop an attack and defend an attack.
Yeah, because it's kind of like how Aikido, a lot they have like seated techniques like from Seiza, because during the presence of an emperor, you're not supposed to stand up. So they have to do all the techniques from kneeling, basically. Yeah.
You attacked me for the emperor. I can't stand, so I had to do everything from a kneeling position. Yeah. There was a time. So those are the main kata. There's 7 of them. And as you get higher in the judo, you have to learn usually 1 kata per belt. So let's go back down to the first kata. Okay. So let's go back to Nagi no Kata. Now, like I was saying, in some place in Europe, like I know I have some French friends, some players that come from France. When they get their black belt, they didn't have to perform the whole kata, no matter if they had points or not. What their thing was that they had to do the first 3 as uke and tori. They do both parts, uke and tori. That's the thrower and the throwee, both parts. But then when you get to your second dan, you have to perform the whole kata. Now, I don't know if you have to perform the whole kata. Well, knock my shit over almost. I don't know if you have to perform the whole kata and what's the next one? Tatami no Kata? I don't know if you do Tatami no Kata and the whole Nagi no Kata or just perform all of Nagi no Kata. I'm not sure. Anthony, do you have any?
I have no idea. I always thought Tatami Kata was nidan, always nidan across the board, usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe you have to perform like I said, you have to perform the whole thing and kami no kata.
Yeah.
Like I know some places here in the US, like one place out here, Sawtell, I believe, to get your brown belt, you have to do the first 3 sets of Naga no kata, right?
I don't think so, but I think they started teaching their brown belts pretty early on. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause that's kind of a weird thing too. Like I was at this kata clinic and I'm doing a 3rd dan kata. Okay. So, yeah, I can't remember. This is where you get confused in the kata names. It's a funny thing. It's always no kata. So I'm like, oh, no, I don't have to do kata. No kata.
Is like of. It's like saying of, like the forms, like the self-defense form of grappling, or the form of like something of gun, like gun self-defense, like
gun self-defense. So when I went to the Judo Kata clinic, there were 2 brown belts there, which is rare because most of the kata clinics I've been to only has black belts. Mm-hmm. So to go to this kata clinic, that's for 3rd dan kata, and I see 2 brown belts there was a little surprising. But I guess that if you're not going to be, if you know, I'm not going to be a heavy competitor. All right. I'm going to be a kata guy. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a kata guy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some people might give you shit or talk like, oh, you don't fight or you don't get on the mat. It's like, I know we all think of that way, but you don't have to. So if you know, I'm gonna be a kata guy and you want to start a brown belt, get it done. Why not? Get it started. All right. And I heard there was also some brown belts at the Goshin Jitsu, the Goshin Jitsu kata clinic.
Yeah.
But Goshin Jitsu is actually pretty complicated, I hear. I've never done it. I've only watched. I've never done it at all. So I was hearing that they were having a hard time with that.
It's pretty hard, I think.
Yeah.
The Gardena Judo out here by me, I think once a month on Saturdays, they used to host it before COVID. I've been meaning to go, but we haven't been able to. Also, Bridgetown Judo, which I visited on Tuesday mornings, I think they once a week they hold kata classes. Mm-hmm. So more and more places there are places that just teach kata to everyone, like even white belts. If you want to learn kata as a white belt, it's not necessarily like a high rank like judo thing, which is good because I'm sure we're going to talk about it. But I think judo kata was a beginner kata. It was meant to you're meant to teach beginners that kata, not. So let's go to fourth dan,
because I know it's a big thing for you, and everyone sees judo kata and they think, oh, it's just you come here, you lean back, you slap your leg, you come back, you twirl around, you lean back again, you slap your leg, you come back, you twirl around together. Then he picks you up for the throw. Then you slap your hands and you come back down. And it is the balance kata. It is a kata that's supposed to be like for your 3rd dan. Now, okay, so you know how to do all the throws. Okay, you know the basics in throws. Okay, now you know all the basics of newaza. You can do arm bars from 5 different positions. You can do 5 different chokes. You can do leg locks and sweeps and stuff. You know the basics of newaza. So now let's see how good your balance is. So it's your 3rd dan now. Let's see how good your balance is and foot movement. And that's one thing I noticed when I actually being taught. I'm not saying like properly, but being like really having some kata masters there watching me and telling me what I'm doing wrong, really critiquing me, how much, not how difficult, but how intricate the footwork is, the hand movement is, the balance of holding a person.
When you shift your weight. Yeah.
Yeah. Keeping yourself stiff, where when your partner lifts you up, they want that high arch. And it's the one where, you see the videos, they pick the person up very slowly and they bring their own legs up high into the air. And then you come back down controlled. So it kind of opened my eyes because I did it before. It's like, okay, yeah, I know this part. I know come in here. But it's really different. And so, Anthony, tell people why you think, give a little history of Judo Kata, please.
So, as far as I know, Judo Kata was invented by Jigoro Kano when the Kodokan grew so much that he can no longer supervise all the beginners. He can't go to everyone and teach them from the beginning, right? So he created a kata for them to practice, which is why it has no actual throwing or falling involved. That's why people look at it as like, why is it look so stupid? Because you clap, because the in-air clap is kind of like tapping in the air. and you get put back down slowly. And that way, it's a safe way for beginners to learn how to, like you said, balance, how to shift your weight, how to be a good uke. Because if you're a terrible uke, like you're just like a noodle, then you can't do it. And if you're too stiff, it doesn't work either. And you got to be stiff at the right time, like you said. So it teaches all these beginner concepts to beginners without having to have them fall. Because not that you shouldn't teach them how to fall, but at the same time, it takes time to build up how to learn how to fall. Because as we know, we've taught some people for months and they're still not that great at falling. It just takes time. So this is a good way to introduce people to throws and the mechanics of judo safely. And that's why it's a beginner kata, because it was meant to be taught to beginners. And other than what you said about, like we said, balance, when to stiffen up, when to shift your weight between your feet and stuff like that. A lot of people ask me this all the time. It's like, what do you mean by don't bump? Like if you don't, when we teach ogoshi or any hip throws, you know how some people just bump their hip up to pop the person up?
I had to explain some people this weekend of why don't I pop my hips backwards on somebody? And I tell them like, because you pop your hips backwards, where's their body going to go? Away from you.
Yeah. So
tight up and over.
Usually you would have to explain, you need to like bend your knees, pull them on top of your back to break their posture, their balance, kuzushi, whatever. And then you kind of do like a lever effect, like a prying effect with your hips and your hands and stuff while pulling it tight. You can explain it, but they won't get it. Most people wouldn't get it and it will still go back to popping. And there's actually an exercise that I have them do that has them be able to feel the right way and the wrong way of doing that movement for hip throws. But that concept is built into the Judo Kata. Like if you look at the second set, the Kata Dori, which is the guy thrusts you with one hand, I think it was, and then you catch it and then you hug their back and do an ogoshi. The way that they do that movement shows how the correct hip and hand and feet bending your knees movement works. There's no popping because you're doing it so slow.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that was one of the things where Matt's the next day is like, oh, my knees are swollen, my back hurts. Because when we did it before, it was kind of like this, like, yeah, we move straight and stuff and try to keep it straight. But when we're doing the kata for the instructors, it was like, keep your knees locked straight. Just move your back. And it's like, it's all a counter. It's always funny. It's one thing about kata that I'm going to tell you. It is super counterintuitive to how we teach and how we learn. Because like you're taught to do it one way your entire life. And now you have to do it this really formal, proper way. That is the most wrong way to do stuff. So it's like, okay, keep your legs straight, but only bend at your waist to pick them up. So he's trying to bend at his waist to pick me up. I'm trying to help him by posting my hand like I'm supposed to instead of to lift up. It's a crazy thing. It's supposed to do with control. With control. Pick me up with control. Put me down with control.
So I'm not like an expert at it, but from what I interpret from watching it is if you do it right, you shouldn't have to bend your knees that much. And that is true too for most hip techniques when we do judo. When you start doing moving uchikomis, like moving throws, when you add movement to it, you don't really have to bend your knees that much. It's only when you do stationary starting learning that you have to bend your knees a lot. And that's one of the reasons why people think you pop them up, because you bend your knees so much. But if you look at the Judo Kata, that set that I told you about, that Kata Dori, there's not much knee bending. And then also it teaches the uke how they should behave when they're being thrown like this, because you don't see people stepping around, because a lot of beginners, they step around when people come in for a turn throw. It shows them how they should behave properly and how stiff they should be, right? So there's value in kata, and this kata should be taught to beginners, and in my opinion, maybe not the whole set, but maybe you can pick and choose parts of it, like that section of the Kata Dori, you can use it to teach ogoshi, or some of the other ones. There's ukigoshi in there, I think too. Like, and then there's like ipponse nage. There's all these other stuff that you can use in the kata to teach people. Nage no kata is the same principle. Like, I think the uchimata form in the Nage no kata helped me understand Uchimata so much more differently than your traditional style that you see on the Kodokan YouTube channel. Like that is just way too much stuff for people to interpret and understand at once, versus the Uchimata in the Nage no Kata was just like a turning circular motion. And then the Ashiwaza is clearly not much hip involved. I think that is the first one that people should learn, in my opinion. So
it's funny because you brought that up, and I know you always say this about Judo Kata that should be taught to beginners. I brought that up to one of the instructors when during the lunch break. I talked to him about how, like, one of my friends was saying, this should be a beginner's kata. It's supposed to be beginner's kata. And he was a little bit not super like adamant about like, no, it's not. Just like, well, Judo Kata is very complicated. It's very hard to teach. So I don't really think that it should be for beginners. And I don't know if that's just him being like, no, this is a black belt thing, or no, this is for third dans only, because there were some brown belts there, or like this for third dans only. But I think maybe it's the thing of,
so what they're saying is Jigoro Kano is wrong. Like, I want to say it's like the dogma of judo nowadays. It's like, no, this is how it's done now. This is how we're doing it. But I totally can understand how there's certain lifts and throws that we could teach people this. And you don't know what? Yeah, like
you and me, we might do an experiment and teach this people on Friday. Saturday.
I mean, like I said, maybe it's true. Like teaching it to the level, because kata is used as a competition now, so they like correct it to the minute thing, like really minute things. It was
eye-opening when I went there and they're telling me what to do. It's like I've kind of walked through before. I know what I'm doing and stuff, but they're like, no, Juan, you have to step this way, move your hip here, straight as possible. Like one big thing that I didn't notice that I was doing is that you have to do that karate. This is where the judo chop comes from, I believe. I believe this is where judo chop comes from, because all the things you're supposed to use your hand as if it's the sword or the knife, and your thumb has to be tight to your hand the entire time.
Okay.
And sometimes you're not thinking, and you're going to put your thumb out like you're hitchhiking, and you're like, thumb, like, oh, okay. Thumb, oh, okay.
So think about it in beginner's context. Does that thumb really matter?
It absolutely matters.
So that's what I'm saying. Like
that's 1/10 of a point off.
They're saying it's really hard to learn at a competition, like top skill level kind of thing. But I think teaching the basic mechanics, even if they do it wrong, has value in it, is what I'm saying. Like same thing when it comes to teaching the throws. Like when we teach ogoshi, people often don't bend their knees enough, but don't pull their sleeve enough, right? So does that mean we just don't teach ogoshi because it's too hard? Like, no, right?
Well, ogoshi are the first throws you learn, so no, we have to teach ogoshi.
So the logic doesn't apply. It's like if there's value in teaching the mechanics, then you should do it. Same thing with, I'm gonna go back to Nage no Kata because that's the one I'm most familiar with. Since I haven't, I was gonna go to that clinic, but I couldn't. People, the first throw, uki-otoshi, right? That throw makes me understand how certain throws should be done. Like tai-otoshi is basically a uki-otoshi, but for the uke, you're basically falling at a corner, and that arm dragging movement just makes so much. I don't know how to explain it that well, but that mechanic applies to so much of the other throws out there. And if you look at it at first, when I was a white belt and looked at it, I'm like, oh, that guy's falling for him. He's just jumping into it, which is kind of true at a competition extent.
You're allowing him to throw you. I'm not.
You're allowing him.
Well, sometimes, but not all the time.
So when I was a white belt, I just looked at it and I was like, that's stupid. Why? No, we never see that throw in competition. But then you do see that throw in some competition sometimes. It just looks different.
Yeah.
Especially sumi-itoshi. There are sumi-itoshi that happens in competition, but it's not in the kata, but it's the same mechanic, right? But when I took the fall as an uke and I felt someone drag me at that corner, I'm like, oh, I'm being off balance that way. And I have to like go with it, or I'm going to have to like backstep or do something weird to stop the throw. So there's value in learning stuff like that, even though it's not used in competition. And if I learned it as a white belt, I think I would have appreciated and learned all that stuff earlier versus waiting until I was a brown belt to learn that. I thought it was like a huge disservice to myself, actually. I kind of wish I learned as a white belt, basically.
See, that's interesting because that's one of the things where I didn't know judo had katas. When I first started doing judo, I thought judo was just fighting and going to practice, throwing people, going to tournaments, going to practice. That's one thing that I loved about it, because growing up, like So growing up doing Tangsudo and Taekwondo, we did katas, but we didn't do katas all the time. It was like one of the things where we had this one instructor that was a super kata guy. He was very strict on katas. That was his whole thing. But he wouldn't teach all the time. He'd only teach like maybe once or twice a month. So I would only do katas once or twice a month. And you get told, okay, Juan, for your red belt test, you have to do this, or I like an easy kichikamchu ibu or nambu or something like that. Mm-hmm. Have to do one of those katas. And it's like, I don't know these katas. I don't practice enough these katas. We're a fighting school. We like to fight a lot. So I grew up just not liking kata because it's always one of my weakest parts of my game. We rarely practiced it. We rarely did them, but I knew they're going to be a big part of my test, which wasn't fair. So that's why I had to, and this is back in the day, like this is back in the day where you'd have to like buy a kata movie or like a VHS tape and kata movie and stuff and watch at home, or you get the old book. Oh man, you get the old book and you like go through the book. Okay, one step, hand down, step forward. What's the next step? Okay, step forward here and stuff, or low block here. And then you do wishy-washy with the hands and stuff like that. And it's hard to read that, where I think nowadays with YouTube and stuff, it's much more easier to look up a kata and watch what you need to do. But that was my thing that I hated the most. So when I got to judo and I got to my brown belt, and they're like, okay, Juan, a few years, you're going to get your black belt. You need to start thinking about doing Nagino kata maybe. And I'm like, kata? What is it? What is kata? What is this kata you speak of? It was no kata. This is an oxymoron here. Nagi no kata. So you're telling me to do no kata already. You're already lying to me. But yeah, it's tough. And this is something I think, that's why I think when I teach class sometimes, I'll teach little formal things every now and then. And I'll tell them, oh, this is for the kata. If you guys ever get the black belt, you guys need to do it this way for kata and stuff. And I'll show it. And you've been there and stuff. I'll show it like really kata style for fun to let people know. Because yeah, when I was my brown belt and they're like, oh yeah, why don't you start thinking about Nagino kata? I'm like, Nagino what? Kata? This is judo. We throw, we go to competitions, we fight.
So right? A really good example I like to use on the value of the kata was, so I was never really a Tayatoshi user throughout most of my brown belt career, whatever. Like it was never really my throw. I was always sasai, osotogari, and ouchigari. Those are my main throws. But when I went to Japan and I visited a dojo, this sensei was teaching Tayatoshi, and I showed my Tayatoshi. He's like, no, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. And he showed me how to do it. And then I was like, oh, so it's kind of like I mentioned before, Sumi Otoshi, but you're facing the other way. Like instead of going backwards, you're going forward. And then for the uke is falling like uki otoshi in the Nagino kata. He's like, exactly, that's it. So once I got back to America, I started doing more research on it. And that's when I was like doing the kata more. And also I looked up Tokyo Hirano for those who don't know. Like,
yep. That's where Hollywood Judo gets our Tayatoshi from.
So look at Tokyo Hirano on YouTube. Like, I think it's not exactly black and white, but it's a very grainy picture of him teaching Tayatoshi. And he did it exactly that way. Because most people think of Tayatoshi as that spread your legs out and then use your right leg. Well, if you're right-handed, use your right leg to block the leg and then block the leg and then pull them over. Mm-hmm. And I always saw that as like, oh, let me just kick my leg across and pull them over, like block the leg, right? And most beginners think that too. But if you look at Tokyo Hirano, he does a version of it to demonstrate the exact mechanic I was talking about, where you throw the uke to the front corner and there's no leg blocking involved at all. That led me to remember the old book I sent you that predates the Kodokan book. There's a picture of like, this is like the first judo book, basically. There's a picture of what Tayatoshi looked like back in the day. There was no leg blocking at all. There was no leg blocking. You're just throwing them to the corner. I showed Philippe, and then Philippe was like, well, thank God we improved on that.
Well, it's funny you that story because it's a story that, and this is go back to when I did the kata clinic for Nagino kata, when they're demonstrating it. I can't remember which instructor it was, but they're telling a story about like how, and it's funny, it's Tayatoshi of all things. Yeah. Tayatoshi was invented because Jigoro Kano, his favorite throw was like uki otoshi or ukigoshi. Ukigoshi is like his favorite throw.
Yeah.
Was his favorite throw. But one of his students caught on to it
It's
And it
not.
was like,
You're thinking of Haraigoshi.
was it? No,
That's
no,
how-
because he.
it was-
No,
it
no,
was
because he started
Haraigoshi.
putting out the leg. He put out the leg, and that's why he went
It's
Taitoshi. Was it
Haraigoshi.
Was it Hayagoshi?
Yeah.
All right, whatever. But it's like funny because how things get evolved and how things change. It's like, okay, he got my throw. What do I have to do to improve this? I'm going to kick my leg out. Boom. He's over.
So the main thing, the Otoshi part of Taitoshi is body drop, right? Taitoshi is body drop. And people are like, yeah, you're like, when I was a white belt, people were like, you dropped the other guy, so it's a body drop. I'm like, well, technically you're dropping everyone in judo in every throw, but you're actually dropping your own center of gravity to bring them off balance. And then the splitting of the legs, like kicking your leg out, that's a way of lowering your center of gravity. And you also widen your base, so you're more stable. But the leg block, I'm pretty sure it came afterwards. I don't know. Maybe someone who's a judo scholar can look it up, but it came afterwards. Blocking the leg was like a sweet spot, like a sweet spot. And when we were teaching beginners Taitoshi, they kept blocking and kicking people's knee. And I think it's because they think of it as a leg block. When I tell them, don't think of it as a leg block. The leg block is like a cherry on top. Like, think of it as dropping your weight first. Once you get that and the hand pulling correctly, then add the leg block in. And then that, I found a lot more success in teaching people when you explain it like that. But without the kata, I would have never have understood it that way. And I didn't mention it, but after I understood it as that way, I started hitting Taitoshi like crazy on people. Like,
okay. So that's one of the good things about the kata also. Like when you do nagi no kata, or like how you do juno kata, or you do kimi no kata, you start dissecting stuff of like, where does it come from? How's it done? And it's like I did say before, like we do things kind of wrong to do it right in a kata, but it's like demonstrating like how it came about, like why we do it this way, dissecting it, and it might improve stuff, might help you out, figure out things, you know? Like I do agree doing uchimata from nagi no kata's uchimata, I think is a great way of doing uchimata. Like, I love that circular version uchimata and stuff, because for me, like, yeah, I can get in, dive in uchimata, but doing the circle one is just so much more easier for me. And adding that to my repertoire was just like, oh yeah, this makes so much more sense. And even with when you get to the kimi no katas, you need the newaza stuff, it kind of like refines your newaza. You know, it's like, okay, this is a quarter pin right here. This is how I get taitoshi nice and tight. This is how I get haraigoshi nice and tight on a person. Because it is, I mean, like all the newaza stuff, all the pins, because there's a point where like you hold the person down and they have to try to escape 3 different ways. You know, it's like, I got to hold them down. Like I got to demonstrate it so it looks cool, it looks nice and stuff. We're not going 110%, but it's like, okay, if my partner fights too much here, I'm going to fall off. So I need to adjust this, need to adjust that. And you're going to take that into your own newaza work. The same with arm bars, where I've always done this for a long time, but if I adjust for like, where someone's on their back arm bar, I'm going backwards onto them. There's that part where you I always call them like your fangs, like you're like a spider or like a snake or something. You bite into them with your legs, and at that point you bite in and then you come back, and when you do that, you pop your hips more into their arm area to pop them up to get more leverage. And some people don't understand that. They just think I get on top of the guy and then I lean backwards. And that's the arm bar, right? It's like, no, you have to get your hip in there to pop your hip up to get the arm bar. And it just reinforced that, because there's some people, we're well-rounded school. We do a lot of newaza, we do tons of tachiwaza, but we do everything. But there are some schools out there that barely do any newaza. So if you're not a newaza person, this forces you to learn how to do arm bars properly, forces you to learn how to do chokes decently, forces you to learn how to do ashigarami at least one way, you know, which is like, what's this leg lock? I didn't know judo has leg locks. We do. We have one word for all of it, but we do have leg locks. There's banned. You just can't do them.
Yeah. One other thing that I actually it was actually as I got my black belt that I actually kind of connected the dots for me, that from works for me, that understanding was, a lot of people are like, I'm never going to do the throw like the kata demonstration. And uchimata, for example, like it's really rare you see that circular uchimata. But for me, what really made it click for me was, I stopped seeing as how I'm throwing, because I have my own versions of doing Tayatoshi and Uchimata, but it's more like, how do I get uke into that position right before the split second before the throw happens? How do I get them? And the most common way of us doing it that everyone teaches is combinations, right? So Ouchigari into Uchimata, right? Or for me, it was one of my favorites is Kosoto Gari into Tayatoshi. When I do the Kosoto, they take their step back and then most of the weight goes on their front foot and they're leaned over. And that's like the Kata Uki-otoshi, like getting ready to get thrown into the corner. So that's when I cut the corner and do Tayatoshi. And then you get that Uki-otoshi kind of fall. Same thing with Uchimata. It's like when you do the circular, it's like 1, 2, and then you throw in the third one, but it's kind of like a wave movement, like kind of like drifting a car where you turn one way, then you turn it the other. So how do you get the uke to react in that way? And I've noticed for my Uchimata to succeed, other than getting them moving, uke moving, I have to use my hands a lot to get their body to tilt to the other side. And when they tilt, that's when I jump in for the Uchimata. And that, I don't want to say my Uchimata is perfect because, as you know, I've been working on that for a long time, but I've been having more successes recently with Uchimata because I started connecting the dots that way. And you remember I don't know if you were there that Saturday when I sent Tim flying. Like
maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, Philippe saw it, but Tim is like a pretty big guy, but my Uchimata worked on him. And that was like a moment where I'm like, okay, this understanding is really making Uchimata work for me. And then I went on this trip and I was doing Uchimata on a few people. So for me, I'm still got a long way to go, but the kata really, really helped me a lot. And I really wish I learned the kata stuff earlier. And I've been trying to tell like a lot of intermediate students we have at our dojo, like, you should really learn kata, but they saw it as me, like trying to get them to be my kata partner. So
I need a throwing dummy. Please come over here.
It's been falling on deaf ears, let's just say. So, that's kind of why I guess we're doing this episode on kata, was like, if you have a chance, go learn kata. Even if everything, like I said, doesn't click for you right away, down the road, it's gonna click. Like, trust me, you just have to trust. It's like a cult, right? Like, you don't have to understand how it works.
Just drink the Kool-Aid, please. Please just drink the Kool-Aid.
You don't have to understand how it works. Just trust me. It works. Eventually it'll click. What is this
pyramid scheme you're trying to tell? That's kata pyramid scheme. Then you teach 2 people to do kata, and then they teach 2 people to do kata. No, but I think it's something to keep your eyes. Open up your eyes to doing things. I'm not a big kata person, even though I am a kata person. I'm not a big kata person. I'm like I said, I have this thing of like, I hate katas from when I was a kid, So when I had to learn kata as an adult, I really hated it. But I understand that for me to get higher ranks in judo, I need to get these things done, And that's one of my things that for each black belt I get or I want, I have to get that kata done. Either perform it, demonstrate it at the dojo, at a competition, or go get my certificate. I prefer to get my certificate. That way, just get that piece of paper and it's like, I'm done. That's all I have to do. But we all have to do it. And I encourage people to go try it out. And like I said, I saw a lot of brown belts at these things. If there's a Nagino Kata clinic in your area and you're a brown belt, go try it out. Maybe you're citrus colored, maybe not. It might be a little too much for you, but hey, this is worth an experience. Okay. What's the worst going to say to you? No.
Yeah. Kata, I know this is kind of moving on to something else, but kata also exposes a lot of your weaknesses, I think. One example is when we do our belt tests, for example, let's say you're testing someone for orange belt and then they have to do ogoshi or ipponsei nage or sotogari. A lot of beginners, they would just do it really fast and power through the throw, right? And then when I say slow down, then it kind of, like their cracks start to show in their technique, right? And kata is meant to be done slower than in certain parts, meant to be done slower. Like, for example, kata kuruma, you have to hold uke up for a second and then put him down. It's easy if you just like literally get under them and wheel them over and you don't even have to hold them for a second, because it ensures you're stepping into the doing the steps correctly, transferring the weight of your body and your hips properly, having a strong structure to hold uke up for a second and then tip them over without falling apart. And that can apply to other throws too. And especially big people in judo, when they use strength to make up for technique, I think this forces them to slow down and learn all the proper balancing and structure and everything instead of rely on their strength for the throw. And that's why when I test people for belts, I always are like, you need to do it slower. I know you can do it fast. Now, can you do it slow? So, and it's kind of like people who
Anthony's looking to fail you. All right. That's what I'm just saying.
People who lift weights all the time would know like isometric holds. If they've never done isometric holds before, that sucks. It's like doing planks. Like I can do like 100, 200 sit-ups, but then doing planks, I just freaking hate it because it's similar concept. How you have to be able to like hold these positions to show you're doing your form correctly and you have control over the whole technique. And that's another value that Kata provides that I think regular instruction just is kind of lacking therefore. So
and this is just us talking about the basics. Like this is just basic, the first 3 basic katas. We're not really talking about into, like I said, the 4th and 5th kata where you have to do bow staff or a stick defense, dagger defense, gun defense. And then the other kata, and then it's 5th dan. No, that's 4th. 5th dan kata is sword defense. And I said that's one's mostly in seiza and stuff. So there's interesting things in all these stuff. And you might like think, when I'm being attacked by a sword, you never know. You might be here in LA sometimes. Someone comes out with a machete or something. You might need to use it. I would use the gun stuff though. I would not use that.
For me, part of me is like, all the value I talked about was like Nagano Kata, Juno Kata, Tatami Kata. And then when you start pulling the weapons in, I'm kind of like, maybe this doesn't apply to that. Maybe this is just stuff that's outdated, like everyone says, but I don't know. Maybe
I do want to say
keeping it. So
they are. I think they're cool at least. I guess maybe because when you get older, because these are usually these higher, more advanced katas, you're doing them when you're older, like 40s, 50s and higher and stuff usually. So you can't do big throws that much anymore. That's what you got to do. Like, I can defend against a bow staff. I can defend against a knife, the dagger, the gun and stuff. I forgot to mention one thing about Kimi no Kata. And one thing that people always ask me about when I start teaching people for the Kimi no Kata or second on kata. Why do we open up our legs? And I know you might watch a video. They
open up and then close it before you move. Yeah.
Yeah. You slide, open up your leg, and then you close it. That part right there. I had to actually look up, figure it out myself. What we're doing when we do that is showing we have no weapons. And now I'm coming back in. I don't have a dagger or knife or sword on me and then coming back in. That's what that part is supposed to mean. And I think with that will help you out a lot because you think like, I just open my leg, close my leg. No, it's supposed to be a formal thing of like showing I have no weapons on me. Now I'm going to continue into the choke or into the arm bar and stuff. So that's a little side note there for you, little judo history. So it explains why you do that. But yeah, when you get to the higher ones, it is the circular arms open one. You know, there's the wave motion ones where you push the person down and stuff like that. It's just there's more advanced techniques and stuff that some might not work, some will and stuff, but they're interesting. That's one thing I will always say about judo katas. They're for the most part based in reality for a reason. Not like in karate or tongsu or taekwondo where I'm putting my hands up in the air for bear form, bringing my both forearms in right here, come down with a knife hand, and that's funny. This is an actual tongsu kata. Put my knife hand down because I'm going to hit the groin, grab the groin, rip it off the person apparently, come back up, do a pumping, it was like a pumping arm up here. And then I think I had to do knife hands after that. But so I go down, rip the groin. Someone attacks me from behind. So I uppercut them with the groin in my hand, apparently still.
So back to the weapon thing. Like, again, I'm not there yet. I've never done them. So I don't have that understanding. Maybe I just haven't connected the dots. Maybe it's useless, but if I don't learn it and nobody explains it to me, how would I know? Right. Yeah. But one comparison I like to learn is, I trained Wing Chun. I mentioned it many times in the podcast.
Really? I never noticed.
So the Wing Chun has like a bunch of empty fist form, right? It's a striking technique mostly. There is some grappling, but there's also the wooden staff, the 6.5 point pole. I forgot the English name. 6.5 point, the long pole. staff form. And then there's also the butterfly knives form. So
that sounds fun.
You are supposed to master the fist form before you go into the butterfly knives form, because the butterfly knives are basically an extension of your fists. So if you know the fist form, then you're able to use the butterfly knives. So that's kind of what I could see like Kata in Judo be like. It's just that if you're able to stop a thrust with a knife, then you can stop a thrust with like someone who has longer arms than you, maybe. Like if there's a size difference, someone with more reach, someone with less reach, someone's heavier. I don't know. That's just my conjecture, but that's one example of my experiences of how weapons connect to like empty, what we call empty hand forms, right? And going back to what I said, the first form of Wing Chun is called the Silim Tao. Everyone look that up. If you want to look it up, just look up Silim Tao on YouTube, and you are supposed to do that form for the rest of your life. And the whole name Silim Tao actually means little idea, and it's supposed to start off as like a little idea, and then as you train Wing Chun, it grows. Like you start connecting all these dots, kind of like how I just said, I learned Nagino Kata and I start connecting all these dots. As you learn more, as you do it more and more, and you get more experience with the other forms and fighting experience and everything in the form is supposed to expand on your knowledge. That's why you keep going back to it as like a focal point where you keep practicing and refining and expanding that knowledge. And the 2 or 3 years that I trained Wing Chun, it was totally true, because I'm like, why am I doing this movement? Then I realized, oh, my elbow structure provides a lot more power than if I flared my elbow out for my punches. And then it goes into defense, how I can deflect punches easier if I have my elbow sunken, how if my legs are in a certain position, I'm heavier and harder to move and what better balance and all that stuff. So all this stuff happens in other martial arts that have forms too. So there's value in learning these things that a lot of people are just like, I don't like to do a prearranged dance. It's like,
well, it's the whole thing of like with Kempo and stuff. You know, I have friends that do Kempo, and a lot of people say that Kempo katas are fully useless because they look like dancing too much. But I know some badass Kempo guys, you know, that know how to fight. It's like Kata is supposed to help you learn stuff, refine your movements, and for you kind of like I said before, dissect and understand why we do certain things. And the whole reason katas were invented anyway is because you would have one instructor for like 30 some students, and the one instructor can't watch. There's
no videotaping.
Yeah, there's no videotaping back then. Yeah. So
that's how you pass down techniques.
You get a scroll, and the scroll would have a drawing. You have the connected dots. That's the whole thing about kata also. It's about dissecting the movements, figuring out how it works, and doing it cleanly and properly with nice technique, nice form. And the whole, like I said, the whole reason it came before is because you have one teacher for 30 or 40 students in a dojo or in an area or a school, and this instructor can't be there to help everybody, you know? Just like we've been talking about how this whole time about Judo Kata, Kano invented it for the beginners so they learn how to do balance. And I totally understand that. But after going to this clinic and getting like refined and all this stuff, I'm like, man, I don't know how you teach white belt this stuff.
Well, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. The goal is like, this is what it's supposed to look like. Now you try and do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it's supposed to look like. Now you
That's
do
just
it.
like when we teach any throws, it's like, this is how it's supposed to look like. Now you try and do it. But they have to refine it. That's just how it is.
Yeah. All right. And is there anything else you want to talk about katas, or is that it?
Yeah. I feel like there was one more thing.
One little more thing? One tiny little morsel?
Like you interrupted me, so I forgot.
Look up. You may remember it.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Like we already talked a lot. So yeah, we can bring it up next time, if anything.
Next time. So like I said before, kata is supposed to help you out.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Remember
I remember now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it now?
No. We're talking about prearranged dances. Like a lot of people are like, why am I, for example, the kata no kata, you said open the leg and close it. Like, why do I need to do that? So you might be listening to this and be like, okay, I see value in kata, but why am I doing all these movements like open and closing your legs, or nage no kata? Why do I have to go back and fix my belt and turn around at the same time and all that kind of stuff? I think there's like a mental training part of that involved. So if you look at beginners learning throws, they would like forget to bend their knees first, or the time to bend their knees, like which movement comes first. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of like how the military makes you make your bed every morning. It kind of forces you to do like discipline and doing a checklist in your head and remember everything in an order. So I think there is value to stuff like that too. It forces you to have the mental fortitude and discipline to do everything in order and memorize everything. So that's the last thing I want to say. So,
all right. And with that, I'm going to toss in another little morsel for you to think about for Judo Kata, at least. Judo Kata is supposed to be done technically in full samurai gear. So that's why we are so stiff. That's why we're so like a freaking board. That's why we move so directly certain things, because you're supposed to be imagined that you are in full samurai gear when you do this stuff. And that's one thing that the kata clinics I've been to, they all always say that. Imagine yourself in full samurai gear when you do your movements. That's why you move this way. That's why we're so stiff. And that's why when you hit, you're supposed to slap the mat, you should have this all armor on you. It's supposed to be very heavy. So just kind of imagine that. It's like, again, if you go out and do kata, help yourself out. Imagine yourself in the full judo gear and just walk through it. Don't go fast.
So I have one more question. Did they ever explain to you like why we do certain movements? Like, or did it just, this is how you do it? Did you have to put your weight here? Like, did they explain to you why you're doing this? There are certain things where they would just do stuff, then they would expect you to do it. But I would ask questions. Always ask questions. If you have a question, raise your hand, ask a question. All right. I asked a bunch of questions about certain things. Why did you move here? Do you bring your hand here and stuff to help out to pick the person up for stabilization? I asked tons of questions. And whenever I asked a question, they would answer it. There was nothing like, oh, we just do it. They gave me usually a pretty good answer for everything that I asked. Okay. Because that's one thing that me and Matt, we're not scared to ask questions. Yeah. And there was other people there that would just be this, okay, do it. And I'd be like, no, excuse me. I have a question. So when you come in right here, does your hand come underneath bottom and then up? Like you're doing like an uppercut with your hand almost. Like, yeah, kind of think of it that way. An uppercut with your hand and they turn you around. And the whole thing about tapping with your foot when you step backwards and stuff. Like they explained the big stuff, but there's little movements that I had questions on. They answered it. So like I said before, ask questions if you're at one of these things. Don't feel stupid. Just do it. I don't care. I'll ask questions the entire time. Okay.
That's all right. Is that it?
Yep.
All right. I hope this helps you guys out and stuff. Judo does have kata. It's mostly for black belts, but when you're a brown belt, you should start thinking about it. And like I said, the two clinics I went to.
No, white belt. Don't listen to them. Start learning when you're white belt.
Anthony wants you to start learning when you're a white belt. Anthony wants you to do a third down kata as a white belt too. All right. So that could be pretty fun. But like always, please like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me, _Juan on Instagram. You follow Anthony Throws on Instagram. You follow this channel itself on Instagram at Tatami Talk. If you want to follow us on YouTube, you follow us at YouTube at Tatami Talk. If you have any questions, things you want us to look at, things you want us to do, things you want us to have questions about, as again, always ask questions. Like I said, you can hit us up but tatamitalk@gmail.com. All right, Anthony, is there anything else? Am I forgetting?
No, we're good.
All right. We're good?
Yep.
All right. Don't forget to
slap the mat.
All right.